This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to answer the question, is it too late to buy Bitcoin? If you're interested in learning how to make money in the stock market or the crypto markets, or you just want to see what I'm trading or investing in, be sure to hit that subscribe button. So I've been getting this question a lot in the comment section now that Bitcoin has really begun to spike. Is it too late to buy Bitcoin? I should say from the outset, none of this is investment advice. Please consult with a licensed financial advisor. You may use this video maybe to go over some talking points, and that's really the spirit that it's intended in. So even just a couple weeks ago, I've been warning you guys that Bitcoin FOMO, fear of missing out, is coming soon. And now it's here. Bitcoin has a great looking chart, trading above the 50-day moving average, breaking out here. If we take a look at weekly closes, we can see that if Bitcoin were to close up here for the week, and we just have a couple days left, it would be the highest weekly close since the great bull run of 2017. So very, very significant levels that we're trading at, and we seem to be holding at these levels so far. We can see that this area has been the source of a lot of rejection of price level, particularly last summer. The price tried to trade up here, and we can see these long candlesticks right here indicating that the sellers rejected it. So if we are able to close this week at these levels, it's a very, very bullish sign. Now I want to talk about something that I think is holding a lot of people back, especially new investors into Bitcoin, and that's what we might call anchoring, or the anchoring bias. This is very well known in behavioral finance, and I'll give you an example of it rather than defining it. Let's say that I bought Apple at $10 a share. I'm sort of making up these numbers because Apple has done so many splits over the years. But let's say many years ago, I bought it at $10 a share, had a really good run. I made 2.5 times my money, sold it at $25. And then, of course, it kept going up. Maybe they announced the iPhone. Then all of a sudden, it's trading at $40. And so a lot of people, this is kind of a newbie mistake, will wait and say, well, I sold it at 25. I don't want to have to pay up so much, so I'm going to wait for it to come back down. Now, meanwhile, Apple is, of course, headed on its way to 150 or whatever price you want to use on a split-adjusted basis. And so people who wait to buy very strong stocks or very strong cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin on a dip, this will not work in the strongest cases. If something's going to fail, it may retrace. Now, obviously, Bitcoin is very volatile. It can retrace, but there's also a lot of fundamentals that have changed this year in terms of increasing adoption and increasing demand. And the real example with Apple is once Apple came out with that iPhone, that $25 share price that I sold the stock at, this is all hypothetical, obviously, is no longer relevant because Apple with the iPhone is a completely different company than Apple just with the iPod and the iMac. So when fundamentals change, we need to update our fundamental models. We need to update how we look at the world. And the mistake that's made is when people anchor on past prices. This is the anchoring bias where we just get psychologically attached to a price. Now, what's happened fundamentally that has changed Bitcoin fundamentally, especially in the last few days, PayPal just announced that they're going to be becoming crypto friendly and allow you to hold Bitcoin in their wallets. Now, a lot of people in my comment section have been saying the US is going to ban Bitcoin, etc. And I'm trying to explain to people that this is not going to happen. If it does happen, it's going to happen in a very long time from now or at a much higher price for Bitcoin. Once Bitcoin has a $5 or $10 trillion market cap, then the government's going to get extremely concerned about it. Right now at 225 or wherever it is, 230 billion market cap, it's really just the size of an S&P 500 company. It's not really even its own asset class. So we have the case of Apple coming out with the iPhone. The company has changed forever. The market begins to discount this into the share price. Something similar, I believe, is happening with the PayPal news, and obviously the news from a couple months ago that we talked about on this channel about how the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, which is an official government branch of the federal government, is going to be allowing banks to hold and provide custody for crypto assets, including Bitcoin. So these are very fundamental changes, and what it means is that we should not anchor on past prices for Bitcoin. So now that PayPal has embraced Bitcoin, the world of Bitcoin has changed forever. This is really, I think in retrospect, this will be seen as sort of the beginning of the real bull market in this part of the cycle. So that Bitcoin trading at $5,000 per Bitcoin is no longer relevant in this world. And I would encourage people not to anchor on it and not to say, I'm going to wait till Bitcoin gets down to 3,000 or 4,000. I just don't think that's going to happen again. We could get a flash crash where it goes down a lot and maybe trades down there for a couple minutes or a couple hours. I don't think I personally don't think it's ever going to go below 10,000 again. Maybe it'll never go below 11,000. I don't want to totally jinx things. So don't anchor on past prices in Bitcoin. You have to use current fundamentals and sort of reevaluate. Now, one way of doing that, I'm going to show you a couple ways. The 200-week moving average has been moving up every single week for years and years and years. We can look at this, and Bitcoin has never really closed. I guess in March it briefly for 1 week closed below this moving average. So I should say these are weekly bars, and the blue line down here is a 200-week moving average, and it's provided very good support for Bitcoin in pullbacks. For example, at the end of the really deep bear market at the end of 2018, Bitcoin bottomed at the 200-week moving average. Again, it bottomed in April and March. It was a little bit scary there. It punched through it, but was able to fairly quickly recover. That number is now, that 200-week moving average is now at 69.36. And so if you're expecting Bitcoin to get down to 6,000 or 5,000, I just don't think it's realistic. The slope of this line, I believe, is going up by 3 or 4% a month now. And so this number, this sort of support number, will be rising over time. If we scroll out, we can sort of see what this looks like. It's actually very impressive how Bitcoin seems to obey this weekly moving average line. I want to pause it quickly here and say, if you're getting value from this video, please hit that subscribe button. I've noticed that only a small percentage of my viewers actually subscribe to my channel. So just hit the red subscribe button below if you don't mind. Now I want to talk about price targets for Bitcoin. I'm not going to go really deep into this. I'll refer you to this video where I'm talking about how Bitcoin is going to go to $288,000 in this cycle sometime in the next 18 months to 24 months. So I'll refer you to that. This is basically Plan B's model. He has a couple models that use something called stock to flow. So this stock to flow is a traditional metric that's used for valuing things like silver and gold, where you have a certain amount of inventories and then you have a certain amount of new amounts of the commodity that are being mined every single year. So I go deeply into depth in this, but one way of valuing Bitcoin and maybe getting comfortable with buying it at these prices is to look at the charts of the stock to flow model. So it's been a very good way of the actual price of Bitcoin, which are these colored dots. They trade above and below the model, but over time it seems to be some sort of statistical significance to this model. The model price seems to sort of exert a gravitational pull. So we can see right here that even relative to the stock to flow model, if we look here on October 21st or so, the model, this is looking at a 365-day average of the stock to flow. The model price is 19,500. So if people are anchoring on 10,000 or 11,000 or $12,000 Bitcoin, what the model is showing here, and again, the model could be broken, the model might stop working in the future, but the model is showing that Bitcoin is massively undervalued versus the stock to flow model. Bitcoin's trading just below 13,000 as I'm recording this, and the stock to flow model has it about $19,500 per Bitcoin. So even if we mean revert to the line, if we go above it, as we've done in the past, we can see here that we've spiked well above it, then Bitcoin could go much higher. Now this model is predicting, if we just kind of let's fast forward to next summer of 2021. Here we have Bitcoin at $88,000 per coin. I'll link to another version of this. You really get different results depending on whether you use a 10-day moving average or a 365-day moving average or 463 This one uses the 463-day moving average, and it has us, let's just look at the end of the year here. At the end of the year, roughly, stock to flow price, the 463-day moving average is at $25,000. The 10-day moving average is at $98,000. So this is why I say that I believe we're going to definitely be hitting new all-time highs. So the real all-time high for Bitcoin achieved at the end of 2017 was 20,000. This model has us trading above that at 25,000 by the end of 2020. So I'll link to both of these. You can play around with them, get comfortable with them. If you want to hear a video version of them, you can watch this video, which I will link to as well. So what is an average person to do? Well, I've profiled a couple people on this channel. Here is one of the crazier guys who back in June or end of May actually sold his house, sold his car, and put everything into Bitcoin. I imagine he's a very happy camper at this point. Now, this is obviously a little bit reckless, especially if you have dependents or people you are supporting or family. So what's a conservative way of entering Bitcoin? You may have heard about dollar cost averaging. Some people call it DCA. I'm going to give you very round numbers here just to make it easy. Obviously, $120,000 is a lot of money for most people. But I'm just going to use it to make the math really easy here. So let's say I have $120,000 to invest in Bitcoin. One way to dollar cost average would be to buy equal dollar amounts of Bitcoin. Every month, every week, you can decide the period in consultation with your financial advisor. But one way of doing it would be to cost average $120,000 over 12 months. This would mean $10,000 a month. And so what you do is you just pick a random day. So I'll just say the 15th of the month, kind of the middle of the month, or whatever is closest. If the 15th happens to fall on a weekend, actually you can buy Bitcoin on a weekend as well. Every month on the 15th in the morning, when I wake up after I have breakfast, I'll buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin wherever it's trading. You can adjust this if you only have $1,200 to invest, or if you have $12 million to invest. You could obviously adjust these numbers, but I'm just trying to make the math easy for myself. So $10,000 invested once a month, and this is a really nice disciplined way of doing it. So you're not trying to guess, is Bitcoin going to crash before the election? Is it, and if it does crash, how far is it going to go down? That's obviously fine to do. One can also just look at this and say, wow, Bitcoin's extremely undervalued. I believe in the stock to flow model. I'm paying $13,000 here, and it's really worth like $19,000. That's another way of doing it. But the more agnostic way would be to dollar cost average. You can dollar cost average daily, weekly, monthly, however you choose to do it. But if I'm going to invest buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin once a month, if Bitcoin's at 10,000, I'll obviously be able to buy just one Bitcoin. If Bitcoin has rallied and is at 20,000, I will only buy a half a Bitcoin because I'm basically just putting 10,000 US dollars into that market. So what this means, the advantage of dollar cost averaging, is when the price is lower, you sort of naturally buy more Bitcoin. I'll buy one Bitcoin here. When the price is higher, you will buy less Bitcoin. And so this is one way of avoiding fear of missing out and trying to get yourself off of zero. If you're interested in Bitcoin, one thing I would encourage you to do after you consult with a financial advisor is buy a little bit of Bitcoin, whatever a small amount is for you, $10, $50, $100 worth of Bitcoin. Just buy it and learn how to buy it and then watch it. And once I have a position in a stock or a position in a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, I get much more interested and I actually have some skin in the game. And it's important to do this just with a small amount of money to start, but I find even if I put a little bit of money in it, it's quite different than observing something that I don't have any money in. So I would say only invest money that you can afford to lose. Bitcoin is still a risky proposition. I think it's going to succeed, but I think its outcome is going to be fairly binary. It's either going to zero, there's going to be some problem that makes it go to zero, or it's going to go to $1 million. If it succeeds, it's going to go much, much higher. Almost certainly $100,000 by the end of 2021. And probably, I think there's a decent chance we get up to $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 by the end of next year. So when you put $13,000 per Bitcoin in that context, things look a lot better. I should mention for those who don't know that you can also buy fractional Bitcoin. You don't have to have $13,000 to buy one Bitcoin. You can buy $10 worth of Bitcoin or $50. You can buy fractional Bitcoin, which is called Satoshi. So you can buy 0.0001 or whatever Bitcoin it is. If you want to know exactly how to do that, I made a video about how to buy it using Coinbase and then how to withdraw it and store it on a Trezor hardware wallet. It's kind of funny looking back at this video. I talk about why now is the perfect time to buy Bitcoin. Hint, perfect storm. We were having that liquidity crisis back in March of 2020. And I'm just looking at this video. The price of Bitcoin here was 5,396. But we're going to be careful not to anchor on this price, and instead think about where Bitcoin is going in the future. If you think it's going to be a failed project, and then it's obviously going to go down, and you shouldn't buy it. But if you think it's going to succeed, then the question becomes, how do we value it? And I would suggest that hundreds of millions of new PayPal users coming in, all the institutional money flows that we've talked about, hedge fund managers coming in, and eventually pensions, endowments. We already have corporations like MicroStrategy and Square buying Bitcoin and using it as a treasury reserve asset. So I think the future for Bitcoin is very bright. I own as much Bitcoin as I possibly can, owning something that could possibly go to zero. And my plan is never to sell my Bitcoin. I hope to pass it on to my kids. One thing that's nice about passing on appreciated stocks or cryptocurrencies to your family, to your kids or grandchildren, is there's a cost basis adjustment that happens based on the price of Bitcoin, for example, on the day of your death. That becomes the new cost basis for whoever is getting the Bitcoin from you, and then they don't have to pay taxes. They'll only pay taxes on appreciation from that point on. So tax implications of Bitcoin, obviously complicated and still evolving. Currently taxed just as a long-term or short-term capital gains, just like stocks, but definitely something to consult with a tax advisor about. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Hit that notification bell next to the subscribe button as well if you want to be notified when I post my next video. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.